Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the Noon News from Montana's news leader.
Good afternoon, and thanks so much for joining us this Friday. I'm Aja Goare. Special Counsel Robert Mueller is investigating whether newly discovered information about President Trump's orders regarding the Russia investigation constitute obstruction of justice. A New York Times report says President Trump ordered his top lawyer to stop Attorney General Jeff Sessions from recusing himself in that investigation. CBS's Aja Zhang has more.
According to the New York Times, President Trump urged Attorney General Jeff Sessions to stay in charge of the Justice Department's investigation into whether the Trump campaign colluded with the Russians during the 2016 election. Mr. Trump reportedly sent the top White House lawyer to stop Sessions from recusing himself from the case. When that effort failed, the Times says the president erupted in anger, saying he needed his attorney general to protect him. A newly released book, Fire and Fury, has brought the obstruction question back into the spotlight.
One of the revelations is how the White House responded to a meeting between the Trump campaign and Russian officials.
According to author Michael Wolff, the president's inner circle huddled on Air Force One and decided to say the meeting was primarily about Russian adoptions by Americans. Wolff writes that Trump campaign lawyer Mark Corallo resigned because he thought that conversation constituted obstruction of justice. Special counsel Robert Mueller will decide whether to bring a case against the president.
The saying is, you don't take on the king unless you know you're right and you can win. And so when I say Special Counsel Mueller will approach this carefully, he will.
As further report about the president's efforts to stop the attorney general from recusing himself from the case, a spokesperson for the Justice Department declined to comment. Aja Zhang, CBS News, the White House.
And the White House is pushing back against a book released today that paints President Trump's first year in office in a bad light. President Trump says the book, titled Fire and Fury Inside the Trump White House, is full of lies and misrepresentations. He also says he never spoke with the book's author, Michael Wolff, but the author says that's not true. He claims he and Mr. Trump spoke for about 3 hours. Here in Montana, a Crow tribal judge is accused of assaulting her boyfriend with a bottle of alcohol after he apparently did not return her phone calls. 41-year-old Judge Carrie Covers Up is charged in Bighorn County District Court with assault. According to court documents, Covers Up went to her boyfriend's home in Hardin in the middle of the night because she was upset he had not returned her phone calls. Covers Up allegedly beat her boyfriend in the head with a liquor bottle while he was laying in bed. The victim says the assault only stopped when Covers Up passed out. She was elected judge in 2013. It's unclear how the criminal charge will impact her court duties. A Missoula man faces charges after an assault that left his baby with brain damage. 19-year-old Sean Lewis and the baby's mother took the victim to the hospital with a head injury 2 days before Christmas. Medical staff determined the infant girl suffered extensive permanent brain damage. The victim's mother says she left her daughter with Lewis while she was doing laundry. She returned to find the baby vomiting and lethargic. Lewis claimed he dropped the baby while rocking her, but hospital staff say that explanation is unlikely. A third cold weather-related death in the last several weeks is under investigation today here in Montana. The Blaine County Sheriff's Office reports 48-year-old Antonio Castillo Jr. of Harlem died December 29th. Law enforcement says Castillo died from hypothermia and exposure to frigid temperatures. Castillo was reportedly living in a camper trailer with an insufficient heat source. The fiance of the California man found dead in a van parked at the Kalispell Walmart wants to clear up misconceptions about his death. Katie Wilson says she met David Martinez when she was 16. The Flathead County Sheriff reported the 61-year-old man was found dead in his van last Saturday. Authorities described Martinez as homeless, but Wilson says that's simply not true. The woman said she and Martinez were living together until mid-November when they got into an argument about his diabetes. After a bad reaction from a new diabetes treatment, Martinez told Wilson he was giving up and he left.
Because of all the medications and the pain and going on the injectables and it not working, not getting his blood sugar where it needed to be, he did talk about that he was, done. We couldn't take any more.
Wilson wants to get the word out about her fiance's condition and that he was a good man. Wilson is planning a memorial for Martinez. On that note, the Northeast is heading into the grips of a deep freeze. It comes a day after the region was pounded by heavy snow, hurricane-force winds, and coastal flooding. In Boston, water from the harbor submerged downtown streets. The concern now is whether floodwaters will turn to ice with the incoming Arctic blast. Temperatures are expected to feel like 15 degrees below. We turn now to the weather scene with Ed McIntosh to check in with our own storm conditions.
Yeah, we still have some problem areas in Asia. It's mainly about cold air that's being held close to the surface and warmer air aloft. So in areas like northwest Montana, we started off with reports of freezing rain early in the day. The conditions are starting to ease up now, but it could still leave some slick spots on roadways. Around Helena, same as yesterday, still air quality issues from Helena to the north as the cold air is held to the surface. So is a lot of the smoke and the particulates in the air there. And across the eastern portion of the state, we're down to a small area with a dense fog advisory into effect, but there could still be pockets where, especially in low-lying areas, visibility will be less than a quarter mile, and that could continue into this afternoon and even this evening. A look at the weekend weather forecast coming up in just a few minutes.
Thanks, Ed. We'll check back in on those conditions. The decision Thursday by U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions to allow state authorities to crack down on marijuana won't impact Montana's medical marijuana program. The Montana Department of Health and Human Services says it's dedicated to the people of Montana. Public Information Officer John Ebelt says, quote, Montana citizens have twice made it clear how they feel about this issue through the Citizens Initiative process. Our agency intends to follow state laws so that people with debilitating medical conditions can continue to access the medicine they need. Meanwhile, nearly $15 million in state budget cuts to medical and other services for Montana's poor and disabled will go through. The Children, Family, Health and Human Services Interim Committee voted late last week to lift an objection blocking those cuts. The vote allows the Bullock administration to cut Medicaid provider rates by nearly 3%. Medicaid is the state federal program that pays medical bills for the poor and disabled. State health officials say a bill passed by the 2017 legislature directed them to make the cuts if state revenue fell below a certain level. But State Senator Mary Cafaro of Helena, who opposed those cuts, tells MTN News the panel never received an explanation for these particular cuts. Cafaro says these cuts leave the disabled population without the help they've come to rely on. Committee members who voted to lift the objection said the cuts have to be made to balance the state budget. The Montana Department of Revenue making a big change ahead of this year's tax season. The agency will no longer print paper copies of income tax forms and filing instructions. In the past, the Montana Department of Revenue printed about 58,000 income tax brochures per year. Now, due to budget cuts, the department is looking to save about $60,000 each tax season by not printing the copies. As an alternative, Montanans can file electronically. People who do wish to use paper copies can still print the documents themselves. Before we get to break, retail giant Kmart takes another big hit with this latest round of closures, including stores in Helena and Butte. The company, which also owns Sears, announced the upcoming closures of 64 Kmart locations. The corporation will also shutter 39 Sears stores in March. The Kmarts in Butte and Helena are set to close in April. Business Insider reports Sears is losing more than $1 billion a year, with sales down 45% since 2013. Still ahead on the new news, a federal investigation is underway into the Clinton Foundation. More on the fraud allegations when we come back. But first, Ed has our weather forecast. Stay with us.
You're watching MTN News with Aja Goare.